Thank you for listening to the Oracle of Light. I am your host, Shauna Domalain, and today I have with me a very special guest. I have Brittany Rathge. I think I got that right.
You got it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. I love your work. I was on Instagram and somehow I always go down a rabbit hole somewhere and I find these incredible people and it's like, who is this? I have to connect with this person. And I love the work that you do. Everything with the understanding heart. And I love that you write about everything that you've experienced with child loss and your journey. And I'm just so excited that you're here today. So thank you for joining us.
Shauna, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. That's very sweet. I appreciate your kind words too.
So I would love for you to share with our listeners your story. And of course, everything about your sweet Anthony.
Thank you. So I'll kind of start off. Obviously I do have an Instagram account as well as a blog called The Understanding Heart. I started it about a year and a half ago. And it kind of just came from the place of I did have a miscarriage in January of 2020. And as Shauna mentioned, I named my baby Anthony. And I just realized that this is something that's so common. And I will share a bit about my experience, but there are just my husband and I went through a really difficult time after the miscarriage, as if it isn't difficult enough to lose a pregnancy, to lose a child, however you want to view it. Our experience with the people that were supposed to be taking care of us afterwards was really difficult. I was grateful enough to find like an online community. I felt like I listened to a lot of podcasts after I was going through the grieving process, and I saw a lot of blogs. I saw mainly was on Instagram, just kind of digging to find things that I could relate to. And I was very shocked, but honestly, at the same time, not surprised because of how common it is with just how many women specifically, but families as well that have gone through what we have gone through, right? So I decided I let it kind of simmer. And I decided maybe I think almost a year and a half after my loss that I was like, I think it's time I create a space of my own. And so that's kind of where it came from.
I love that. I love that. It's just so beautiful. And now, would you share with us what the understanding heart means? Where does that come from?
Yeah. So it actually was something that my grandfather, who was also named Anthony, and ironically enough, the day we're podcasting, he passed away 3 years ago today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, isn't that wild? So unfortunately, he had a really intense bout with dementia for a while, but my grandparents were always very big fixtures in my life. And so he always would say, you got to have an understanding heart when he was talking about people. And he's old school Italian guy. Every Sunday we go over to my grandparents' house and he'd be sitting at the head of the table and would have a story to share. And it was always, he was such a good storyteller. And we were all just like, we would hang on to his every word. And I remember his little like speaking tendencies and like the way he would go da 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 and just kind of really all the tiniest things. I just was like so into it, even as a young child. And so he always just knew that you had to understand that everybody was going through something that you couldn't see. And he passed that down to my mom, and my mom always instilled that in me growing up. And when I was thinking about, okay, I want to create this space, what do I want to name it? This just kind of felt like something that made sense to me. When I came up with the name of Anthony, it wasn't necessarily anything, it's after my grandfather. It made sense to me. I always loved that name and I love him very much, but it just hit me. And I might describe that in my story in a bit, but so I feel like it was kind of just in a strange way, very meant to be that this space kind of has a little nod for the impact he had on my life, but also just the fact that it's about listening to other people, and it's about listening to the stories of women, the stories of families, men, who have gone through pregnancy loss, and all the details that, they wouldn't normally get to share with people, because people sometimes don't know that you want to talk about these babies too. Even though I was pregnant, like I have been pregnant 2 times, everyone only talks about the one where I had a living child at the end of it with my daughter. And it's like, I would love to speak about the 10 weeks and 5 days I had with Anthony. So the Understanding Heart is really just about listening. It's kind of an homage to my grandfather. And it all kind of connects in some really fun way.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That is just, I love that. When I was looking through all of your content, I was looking through everything. It's like, wait a minute, the Understanding Heart. Wait a minute. I thought, oh my gosh, we have to share that with everyone. I think that that's just so beautiful. And what a beautiful legacy. What a beautiful way to honor his life and his contribution. And I agree. I mean, everyone is going through something. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something tucked inside that they don't want to talk about. And some of us have more things than others. And pregnancy loss is one of those things. I mean, we chatted about that last week, and it's the work that I do is similar. It's creating a space to honor that loss, honor that child. That child will always be a part of you. You will always be that child's mother. And we talked about this as well, about how people don't really know what to say, and sometimes they say such awkward, strange things. And
yes,
right, we talked a bit about that, and it's I find to this day, I'm still sort of baffled by why people say the things that they do. I know that sometimes they want to say something. They don't want to just stay in silence, but it's just, yeah, it's like, okay, that's really what you said, because what you touched on earlier was, you have a living child. And so a lot of people would say, well, you be thankful you have Emma, and she's so amazing. And, it just wasn't meant to be. And it's just, after a while, it was like, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear anything about it. And, I've shared this before. I love the work of Brené Brown. She always says, people have to earn the right to hear your story. And so quickly after I lost Jack, it was, I don't think I can share with that person. I don't feel good when I share or I talk about it with that person. And then finding your tribe. And I mean, for me, it's been 10 years. And so now it's, everyone is talking about it, and everyone is willing to be vulnerable. I won't say everyone, but it's just the people that are brave enough to step forward and say, hey, this happened to me, and I want to share with you, and I want to create a safe place for people to share.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Like, it's just, I think it's just so powerful. I know, would you share a little bit more about what happened that day, what happened leading up to that day, if you're comfortable, everything that you'd like to share?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, this was my first pregnancy. I now have a living daughter, but this was all happening right before COVID hit, very closely before then. So it being my first pregnancy, I was, my husband and I were like over the moon excited. We have been trying for a few months. And so we were just so grateful that we had got the positive pregnancy test. And everything about the pregnancy pretty much was, I would say, pretty normal, run of the mill, up until there were like a few points that I was just like, certain things don't make sense. We went to one of our ultrasounds and we, heard the heartbeat, but the heart rate was like 86 beats per minute, which if you've, been lucky enough to be pregnant before, that that's not very high. So I asked about it and I said, this normal? And everyone said, yeah, everything's fine. Okay. So the next thing was kind of close to the end of my first trimester. My symptoms started going away. I was very sick, very tired, your kind of standard pregnancy symptoms. And again, reached out to my doctors about it. And they said, oh, you're at the end of the first trimester. You should feel lucky because you're not feeling as sick as you were. So enjoy it. And I'm like, oh, okay, sounds great. And then the final thing, of course, was the biggest one, is at 9 weeks and 6 days, I started to bleed. So this was 2 days after Christmas. And kind of around the 9-week mark was when my nausea started to go away. The symptoms started to fade. And so when I started bleeding, I wasn't surprised, because I knew bleeding was pretty normal in pregnancy, but it was almost like straight through, you're out. I'm like, this isn't good. So my husband and my mom and I actually went to the emergency room together, and we were there for like 6 hours. While we were there, we had the first of many unpleasant, I guess it's the nicest way I can put it, interactions with an ultrasound tech in this case, but medical professionals in general, unfortunately, in our case, where we were having an ultrasound and this woman was scanning. Of course, she can't say anything. And I said, you know, I know this isn't great. We've been here for 4 hours now. You can't tell me anything right now. Like, she wasn't even sharing that she couldn't hear a heartbeat, or she could, or whatever. And she said, no, you know, you have to wait for the doctor to come in. And, you know, stories like yours, they typically don't have a happy ending. And then she kind of just ended the conversation and like kind of scurried out of the room. Like, she was so uncomfortable that she was trying, and it was just like, I was completely speechless. I said to my husband, I'm like, did she just tell us we had a miscarriage and no one else is telling us? Because this is ridiculous. And again, that was just unfortunately the first of many very disappointing interactions. So we ended up that day getting the diagnosis of, basically, I had a subchorionic hemorrhage and a threatened miscarriage. So I was told to be on bed rest and pelvic rest for pretty much the whole week, up until we could figure out what was going on. We were visiting my parents for Christmas in the Cleveland area in Ohio. And we lived in Southern Ohio at the time. So thankfully I'm a teacher. So I had this whole week off in between Christmas and New Year's, because I do not know how I would have been able to go into my classroom in front of my students and just act like everything was okay. But many teachers do that. And during this time, we were trying to get not only in contact with my doctors, but also I was promised at the ER that they would be able to send the ultrasound that they did and all of the experience, like the medical records that they received from our ER visit, to my doctors, because they had the same medical system. Mm-hmm. They didn't. They never exchanged, they never connected. And my doctor refused to pick up the phone and refused to call me back. I called countless times. I just needed to speak to somebody. I was not bleeding, I wasn't bleeding continuously. I was okay, but I was like, something is not right with my baby. Something is not right with this pregnancy. I need support. And thankfully, the people around me were being extremely supportive. I was so grateful that I was with my family when I very well could not have been when it happened. My husband was very supportive, and of course is still supportive to this day with all of this. But I mean, my friends knew what to say. It was very much getting the support from our, I don't know, our village, I guess, if you want to call it that, but not from the people that were supposed to take care of Anthony, which hurt. And being that this was my first time, I was like, am I being too overzealous about this? Am I being too much? Am I calling too much? And I didn't know how to advocate for myself as a pregnant woman. So eventually, after a bunch of back and forth, we managed with my doctors to schedule an ultrasound on January 2nd. And of course, we went in on January 2nd and we found out that there was no baby there, pretty much. And that was at 10 weeks and 5 days. And so to me, that, even though I started bleeding earlier, to me, that's when we lost him. And I know it was probably like over the span of that week. And in that time, I mean, it was so difficult, of course, to see the ultrasound, nothing there. I mean, hear that there was nothing there, but I just kind of knew that that's where this was going. My husband, unfortunately, that was kind of the first time he really realized it. And that was very difficult for him. And so in that moment, I was more so like comforting him. Mm-hmm. And it made me realize just how much he maybe was carrying on his own. You know, I think that speaking about the way men grieve, you know, it's so different from all the women I've spoken with and from the few, and there are some accounts and blogs and podcasts speaking about men's grief in pregnancy and child loss. It's just different sometimes, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I had to, over the next few months, learn how to navigate my husband's grief as well as my own. Mm-hmm. And I felt like this was a very unique loss, because I don't think there's any other death experience in our, you know, in our existence where you grieve alongside somebody else because you created something together. Obviously, if you have a sibling and you lose a parent, like obviously that's every child has a different relationship with their parent. And so it's going to look different for everybody. Same with grandparents. But when you lose a child, it just feels like it's just like a part of you. It's just very, very unique. So I know it's a little tangent. Just something
No,
that
it's
yeah.
perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's true.
Yeah.
I've often said to people, I've lost other loved ones over the years,
Mhm.
but losing a child, there are not enough emotions you can describe it with. There are not enough feelings. There are not enough words. It's a completely different experience. Yeah, I get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And just the way that everybody grieves is different. I think because you lost the same thing, you expect the other person to grieve the same way. And that's just not true. And I don't think anybody could have told me that in the moment. And no one did, but I don't think anybody could have told me that. I had to learn it on my own.
And I find that so fascinating. Are there any, can you give us any, are there any big ways that you realized that your husband was grieving differently? Is there anything that you saw that was, wow, okay, that's different?
Yeah. So probably the biggest way was obviously I was crying quite a bit. I mean, I'm an open book. And as soon, I had my DNC on a Friday, and then what we found out, we found out he wasn't alive anymore on a Thursday, had the DNC on a Friday. Tuesday, I posted it on social media. And this is not something that everybody does, but this is just the way I treat things. I'm just like, this is what it is, like I was pregnant and now I'm not. And I need everybody to know that. And I need everyone to understand that I'm not going to be 100% in the next few months. And it was well received. And I was grateful for that. Did not in any way expect my husband to do that. He's like, tag me in it, like he was like, of course. And he was just as hurt, but he would come up to me. Like there was one time when we were like about to go to bed and he's like, just don't feel like I'm sleeping well. And I was like, really? And I was like, talk to me about that. Like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know. I just feel a little anxious and I don't feel like, and I was like, oh shoot, maybe. And I was like, do you think it's because we just had a miscarriage? And he was like, oh, and it didn't even, and that's not, he's a brilliant, brilliant person, but it just didn't occur to him. He's just like, man, I'm just having trouble sleeping. Then one of the bigger things was one night we were just hanging out. We like to just like chill out, listen to music. And I was in another room of our house and he came up to me and he had his phone. He goes, I need you to listen to this song. And I was like, oh, what is it? And it's a song. I don't know if you ever heard it. It's called Lady by Brett Young. It's a country song.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard that song, you should listen to it right now. But he showed it to me and I heard there's a heartbeat at the beginning. And to be honest with you, it like took me off guard because when you hear that heartbeat, it is such a specific sound. It's an ultrasound heartbeat. And the whole premise of the song is for the singer Brett Young's daughter, about how she could learn to be a lady by watching her mom and all this stuff. And it's very beautiful, very sweet, cute little country stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
But my husband brought it up to me and I was like, am I going to cry? He was like, you might. and he goes, sometimes I wonder if it was a girl.
Oh.
And I was like, well, shoot, because we didn't know the gender. Like, I just always had a gut feeling it was a boy. I have no idea why. But I almost felt like I had disrespected him in a way by just jumping to my own gut feeling and not being like, what did you think? And like, let's talk about it. Do we want to, because when I heard the name Anthony, it just came out of nowhere. It was so loud to me. As soon as we were leaving the ultrasound, I was leaving the hospital and he needs a name, needs to be Anthony. And I was like, okay, we're going to sit on that for a second, but that sounds pretty good to me. Like that fits. And I shared that with him and I said, I think I would like to name him Anthony. And he was just like, okay, you know, and I don't think that he's hurt by that to this day. I don't think that that was a big deal to him, but I realized I had never discussed that with him. And so those were just a few moments where it kind of hit like, okay, well, we need to sit down and have a little bit more of a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And you know, that's in the work that I do. Yeah, I work with moms, and then
Mhm.
every now and again there's a dad that'll sneak in on the call, or there's a dad that'll join, you know, our group, or
Yeah,
and it's, you know, it's recognizing, yeah, they've experienced a loss as well. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's so important to understand, that not only do women all grieve differently, men
mhm.
grieve differently as well. I mean, they have a different way of processing things and looking at things, and a loss like this impacts everyone so differently, so differently. And
Definitely.
so I remember you shared with me that it took your doctor's office a week to get back in touch with you. Would
Yeah.
you pick up the story for us?
Yeah, of course. So, they finally got back in touch with me. We had the ultrasound. And then of course there was nothing there. And then that evening, actually, I ended up, it was almost like my body knew, because I really hadn't bled between the 2 days after Christmas to January 2nd. I really did not bleed very much. And it was almost like my body released they were like, we know now, you know that you're having a miscarriage. Here it is. And I was basically passing clots from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. I was on the toilet because I had no idea that you could go anywhere else. And that's just another thing that I didn't know until I listened to podcasts and I read stories, women being in their bathtubs or being in the shower, or even women thinking to hold something underneath and catch their baby. And that could have never been a possibility for me, unfortunately, because I found out later that it was an incomplete miscarriage. So basically my body absorbed the products of conception, my baby, whatever you want to call it. And so that's why there was like essentially nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was passing those clots, I was by myself. My husband was in the other room, but I mean, you know, what is he going to do? You know, he was supportive and there for me if I needed him. But I was like, I just got to do this. I just got to kind of hustle through. And quite literally, I mean, bear down and contract and do. And I was in labor, and that's how I truly felt. And that's the other frustrating part of it, is all they tell you is that it's going to feel like a heavy period. And it most definitely does not. That if you have periods like that, you should see a doctor. It's not normal. So during that time, my friend, who is not only in the medical field, but was also pregnant with me and due days away from me as well, who had also had a miscarriage with her first pregnancy, messaged me, literally just checking in. And it was just like right place, right time thing. And I said, listen, I'm actually miscarrying right now. Can you please kind of walk me through this? And thankfully she was able to take the time to do that. And she first addressed it like as a friend first. She said, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. And then she kind of went from the medical aspect and was like, okay, here's what you can do for pain management. If it gets this bad, you should go to the ER, you know, all of these things. And it's just like, I was lucky enough that was just a, you know, a God thing, a universe thing, whatever it is, just saying, okay, well, this person, you need this person right now in your life. Like not everybody has that, you know. Had I not had her to speak to, I wouldn't have necessarily known that what I was doing, what was happening was normal. I know now because of all the stories I've been able to hear and listen to and engage with these women, but I had no idea. So after that whole night, the next day, I finally wake up from a call from my doctor's office. And the first thing my nurse practitioner says is, what are you doing? Barely a hello. And I was like, I'm drinking coffee. What's going on? How you doing? And she was like, stop drinking your coffee. You are getting a DNC today and you can't eat anything before. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for telling me, but I have been waiting to hear back from you. I have so many questions, so many things I need to discuss with you. Can you just like take a second and listen to what I have to say? And to be honest, she was pretty frustrated with the fact that I was taking up the time, because on her side, it was Friday. She wanted to get me in, which is for my safety. I get that. She wanted to get me in before the weekend, which I get. However, I had waited for literally a week. I mean, from the day I started bleeding.
Yes.
And I had heard nothing. And so I was asking a few questions, and here I am. I'm like, I want to know, when can I get pregnant again? Because that might sound like, well, Brittany, that's not what we're doing here. But all I just wanted was to be a mom. Like, I was like, gosh, I just feel like we're starting at like square one again. And it's so tough, not only just to hear that your baby died, but look what you worked so hard for. You got to go all the way back and start fresh. And it was just, that was really on my mind, that I would not have a baby in July anymore. Like my whole year was just completely shot. So we scheduled the DNC that day. And I'm very grateful I got it, because physically it was more uncomfortable to go through what I went through the previous night, passing all the clots, versus basically waking up and it was over. And thankfully, I guess they were still 70% of the tissue, of everything left over. And so I was very grateful that they were able to get that out. I thought I passed a lot, but I guess it was just a small amount. So it's wild. Yeah. How much your body actually produces. So in that, right before my DNC, they of course made me sign like all these forms. And one of the forms they made me sign was what we wanted to do, my husband and I, with the remains of our baby. And there was pretty much like a little checklist. There was a death certificate. There was basically leaving the remains at the hospital. There was a full-blown service, like funeral and everything. But the one that seemed to fit the most with us was this mass funeral plot that the hospital network had just set up with a local cemetery. And there wasn't even a checkbox for it. They told us about it and they're like, this is brand new. It's something that we're looking to start soon. And your baby would be one of the first ones to do it. And my husband and I just felt like that was the best option. We felt like we had lost something. We felt like he died. So I was like, well, it would be really cool to have a space where we could go, visit him or something, or just to kind of prove that he was here. So this is, unfortunately, as if all of this wasn't so difficult, this is where the story gets very frustrating. And basically, I wanted to know when the remains would be sent to this plot. And I begged multiple people from the cemetery and the hospital. I said, please, 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 when he gets sent to the cemetery and is buried, please let me know. I would like to go visit, not even necessarily like be there when it happens, even though I would, but I'd like to go visit and just pay my respects, get some closure, whatever you want to call it. I was told by multiple people, either, hey, you should call this other person, or hey, don't worry, I got you. And it was just so many different people. I spoke to like a security guard at the hospital. I spoke to the main person at the cemetery. I spoke with, it's probably the worst one, a woman in labor and delivery who they made me call her, and she was delivering a baby. And they're like, oh, she can't get to the phone right now. And I'm like, do you know why I'm calling you?
Oh my God.
The time to be telling me that, but okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, just the full gamut. Just so many people. And I kept getting the same answer. So after a few weeks, I just stopped calling. I was like, I can't be this person to keeping like, hey, where is he? Where is he?
And now this is a new service that
Yes.
that just started. Okay. Right.
Yes. And so understandably so that everyone's kind of like, I don't know if you should talk to the cemetery or if you should talk to the hospital network, but try this person. Right. And so I get that. But at the same time, it was, when I was told to reach out to certain people, I'm like, okay, well, there's probably one person I can talk to. And I guess there really wasn't. So there was a day about maybe like a month later where I was sitting in my classroom during my lunch period. And I was like, I feel like I need to check in with the cemetery. I just feel like I need to just see where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, and basically he had been buried a month prior and no one had told me.
A month.
A month. And it just, as if this all wasn't just like a gut punch. And I just felt so tail between my legs, even asking these people like, please, please, please just call me. It just felt like a huge slap in the face that no one did.
Mm-hmm.
So that same weekend, my husband and I kind of just like swallowed our pride and we're like, we're going to go to the cemetery. We like got flowers and everything. It was February, so it's cold in Ohio. I mean, it was like a mess. And we go to the cemetery, and the grave was, if it was there, it was not marked. I mean, in any way, shape or form, or they did not properly show us where to go because we missed it completely. And I'm telling you, we scoured. It was an infant section. So there are very tiny graves, and there are, unfortunately, it was large, but I mean, walking up and down these rows, and just in my head, I'm going, baby, please just show me where you're at. Please, this is a nightmare. Please just show me where you're at, over and over and over again. And there was nothing there. And I could not believe it. I was like, how many times are these people going to do this to somebody that had lost a baby? So when I reached back out and kind of was like, I don't know what happened, but there is no plot, as you shared, they mentioned to me that there were 14 other families' names in addition to ours on this list. And I was like, how are there 14 other mothers that went through the same thing I did within the same time frame I did that don't know where their babies are? I don't feel like that's okay. And they know where they are. They're not with them. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't acknowledge the fact that when babies die and don't make it here, was that they were here. And the fact that this is the one example of, hey, they were somewhere on this earth for a second, that was just completely disregarded, just completely gutted me. So we did not work up the courage to go back anytime soon. COVID hit. It was a whole thing. And eventually I reached out close to Father's Day. They thought it wasn't marked. I got mad. It was like a whole thing. And eventually I was done. I reached out to a bunch of people, and this is on Facebook. I was like, look, I have pre-written a note that I would like people to send to the hospital network explaining why this is so painful. And it was well written. It was not blaming anybody, but it was also at the same time saying, you need to do better by these families. If you're going to do this, then do it. Assign somebody this task of, okay, let's have a social worker on this case and be the middleman. Yes. Between the two, because this going back and forth is not cutting it. And this happens so often that you would think that it would be more important. Mm-hmm. So it is marked. We finally went and visited last summer because we don't live in that area anymore. Right. So when we went back to visit some friends, I was like, I think it's time. We actually brought our daughter with us, which was pretty significant. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was the most significant was that when we went back, there was Anthony's, grave that was pretty much from January 2020 to July. Yeah. And then there were 3 more. So my heart told me that if I hadn't said anything about him, then maybe those other 3 wouldn't be marked. I obviously don't want them to be there, period, but we know that that's just a part of all of this. And the fact that there was the acknowledgement just meant so much. And that's all we're looking for. That's all we're looking for, is to say your baby mattered. They still matter. It doesn't matter if you lost them 20 years ago, if you lost them a day ago, they're important to you. And if they're important to their mom, everyone should know about them.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Oh my
Sure.
goodness. Thank you for sharing that. I love what you said earlier. I mean, we are the advocate for ourselves, our body, our experience, our baby, our loss, all of it. And now, can you share some different ideas and tips as to how to best support someone when they have lost a pregnancy, when a pregnancy has not been viable?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably one of the biggest questions I get asked, mostly by close friends or family that have not experienced loss themselves, but want to support somebody. And that is the sweetest thing. I think that there are so many people that are like, listen, I know you went through this. I have a friend that's going through this. My sister's going through, I mean, what should I do?
Yes.
I think that even just you asking that question means the world. And obviously I'm ready to receive it and I'm ready to help somebody. Maybe asking your friend that just had a miscarriage might not be the best way to go. But I think there's just so much kindness coming out and in the support that we're trying to create for these women and families. So I just think that's so great. But the top thing I will always say is to say something. The worst thing you can do is remain silent. And I know it's very easy, as you shared earlier. Sometimes we don't know what to say and we think, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And that's true. There's a lot of really wrong things to say. And people said some wrong things to me. I mean, like, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I think I've heard worse from other people, but there were definitely some tough things. But what I will never forget is the people that took weeks to reach out to me, because, and I remember exactly who they were. And I hate that. And I don't mean to keep score like that, but I think silence is louder sometimes.
I think so too.
Yeah, saying something like, I'm sorry for your loss. I mean, anything you would say to somebody that has lost a grandparent, a parent, a sibling,
Yes.
any typical loss, this is it. This is the same thing. No at least statements. Oh, at least you were only this far along, or like other platitudes, like it was God's plan. It's like, no, it wasn't his plan.
This was not his plan,
die.
right?
Like,
no, and
yeah.
be thankful that you have Emma, and be thankful that you're young enough. You can try again. Maybe you can adopt, or maybe you can get eggs from somebody else, or and they had all these. It was almost like,
Yeah, absolutely not. Not the time. And as if these thoughts aren't already running through our heads of like what else, what
right?
other things we can do. But the fact that we lost our baby, it's like, oh, you're right. I do have my daughter. It does make me feel better. No, but I also went through a really traumatic experience, and that's completely invalidating.
Yes,
That experience.
invalidating. Yes,
Mhm.
invalidating. And I had a couple of people say, I'm not really sure what to say, but
Mhm.
I'm here and I'm sorry. And you're
Absolutely.
right. It's interesting because when, someone loses a grandparent, that loss compared to losing a child, woo, totally different experience, right? Like it's like there's a taboo around it. Like we don't talk about it. We just, especially when it's a miscarriage, any sort of pregnancy loss. It's like, we're not really going to acknowledge that. We're just, we're just going to look for solutions. We're just really not going to acknowledge that it was a loss. And that is so key in the work that I do with women, is that that was a real loss, and you will always be that child's mother. That child will always be your child, and that connection is always there, period. I don't care how it happened, if it was a day, if it was weeks, I don't care how that happened, or how the loss occurred. It's just, we are acknowledging it because it's real, because it's a pain, and it's changed us. It changes us as it changes everyone who loses someone, but especially with a child, there's something different about it. It's like, it's multifaceted somehow. It's just, there's so many different pieces to it.
Definitely. And, similarly, when you spoke about how you don't talk about losing Jack that often. You're like, it was obviously extremely pivotal in your life and he will always be your baby. But you don't have to talk about your loss in order for it to matter. Obviously here I am going, I have a whole blog and you can share your story on the blog. But
Right?
at the same time, no one, I know plenty of people who messaged me after I had my miscarriage going, hey, girls I went to high school with that like I barely talk to anymore. Hey, I had a miscarriage too. I just had my second loss. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, people coming out of the woodwork saying, I've had a miscarriage. I never saw it on their feed. I had no idea. And I would have never known unless I had one myself.
Mhm.
So, if you're listening to this going, well, I'm really not in the place to talk about it. Fine. That's totally cool. You never have to talk about it. But the important thing is that the acknowledgement of in your own heart, you have to know that this was your baby, and they matter no matter what. And the experience that you went through was very real.
Yes.
And everything that you experienced before, after, I mean, the pregnancy, all of it, that was a real experience. And so you can treat it like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I love what you just said. I mean, that is so perfect. And, I always tell people, I mean, I'm 10 years in. I mean, Jack would have been 10 this year. And so 10 years ago, I did not have any community. I went to my doctor and I said, I don't feel good. And she said, well, we should maybe put you on a low dose antidepressant. I said, no, I don't think that's what we need to do. And then she said, and maybe you should start, maybe you should go talk to someone, go to a counselor, talk to someone about your feelings. And I'm like, if I talk to one more person about my feelings, I'm going to blow up. Like I said, it wasn't, it was like, I found I found it difficult to close the loop, so to speak. And so that's why I love to create a sacred space for people. And same thing, even family were like, we had no idea. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to talk about it. I think that was part of it. It was like, it was such a tremendous loss. And it was the beginning of the end of my marriage. And it impacted every aspect of my life. And so it was almost like, I need to find a way through this for me. And now this many years later, I mean, Jack's my why. He's why I do what I do. And I teach women how to make the connection and I facilitate grief. And I just, honoring that loss, no matter what that looked like for you, that is a loss and everyone handles it differently. So true. And I get messages all the time now. I didn't know that you lost a son and I lost, and yeah, it's like, and then all my girlfriends, even girlfriends that I've known for years, I had no idea that they had such losses. And so it's really quite fascinating when you start to look at it, because it's like society kind of has this, well, it wasn't real. It was real. Let's just get over it. Let's just not talk about it. And I don't know if I shared this with you before. My grandmother had several babies that she had lost. And I remember someone said after the last baby that she had lost that she was never quite the same. And it was like every year that anniversary would come up and she just wasn't herself. And they would say she's in one of her moods. And it's like, no, she has had a tremendous loss and this is traumatic. And women who have had miscarriages, who have lost pregnancies, who, have had these experiences, I mean, they're coming out with more information every day about this. I mean, the effects of it, PTSD, and our sleep is impacted. Our relationships are impacted. We are not the same people anymore. I used to tell people that. It's like, I'm not the same person I was before before Jack, I'm not the same person. And it's incredible how it really changes you. And now something I wanted to chat with you about was the toxic positivity. I love this. When I read this on your blog, I was like, ooh, this is so good. This is so good.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, this kind of goes back to what we were just speaking about of like what to say and what not to say. I mean, you shared at least you're young and you have your daughter and all of these things where it makes perfect sense to automatically go, okay, here's the bright side. And I think that that's like human nature to just automatically say, hey, you don't have it so bad. And like, sure, that's okay. And I think it's important in these dark moments that we think about, of course, all the good things we do have, but ask any lost mom, after you lose your baby, you're not really looking for a bright side. You're just angry, and you're allowed to be, and you can be angry for as long as you want. I know there's a lot of women I follow that, I mean, they've had some time in between their loss, and they are still pissed. I don't know if I can say pissed. My mom doesn't like
we
that.
just said it. I think I dropped an F-bomb a few months ago.
It's
Like,
fine.
oh, okay.
Whatever.
It's
Let
out.
it sit.
We can't cut that out. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. But they're still in, it's like, it's okay. I get it.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're just not in the space to be, oh, I guess it's gonna be okay. Like there is a time and space for hope. And it's very difficult to find when that is for a specific parent that went through pregnancy loss. I'm doing, it's Pregnancy After Loss Awareness Month, all of March. And I'm featuring stories about pregnancy after loss, because as difficult as pregnancy loss is, which is what I talk about all the time, pregnancy after loss is very unique and scary in its own right, and has so many different emotions. And I'm fully aware that some women right now maybe have muted me, which I respect, because they just can't be in this place of like hope. Yeah. And I share those stories not to be like, everything's going to be fine and everyone gets their rainbow baby, because not everybody does. And it's almost to the point where even on my own account, I feel uncomfortable sharing about my daughter, because I know I am in a place of extreme. I mean, that doesn't happen for everybody. And I know that. And I don't take one day for granted. I am very aware of how lucky I am to have her. And when I tell you, I think about that every single day. I think about it every single day, even when she's a pain in my butt.
How old is she? How old is she again?
2. So
fun. 2.
We're in it. Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. But, and it's not lost on me that I know that there's plenty of women that would love to be in the trenches and that are still, waiting. So I think this idea of, well, just be positive and you'll get through your infertility, or just be positive and you'll feel better about your stillbirth, your miscarriage. It's just not something that women are all in the space in. You have to be ready for, if they come back at you like, I don't want to be positive, and you have to be ready for the range of emotions they're going to feel. If you say, can you tell me a bit about your baby? Because I think a lot of women want to speak about their babies. I think some don't. But even if it's just, well, I named him this and they were born this day. Or maybe you'll get, okay, so I found out I was pregnant on this day, and like you'll get the full gamut. But the response cannot be, oh, well, they got really mad when I talked about that. Yeah, because you're telling them at least you should be positive, or at least you should do this. It's not the time. It's not it.
And like you'd mentioned earlier, it's invalidating. It's invalidating their experience. And like, we go back to the understanding heart. I mean, everyone has a story. Everyone has hurt. Everyone has something that they're working on or working through. And when you lose a child, there's so much that comes with it, right? I know I went through well, if I'd done this sooner, if I've done that, and maybe I should have not, maybe I waited too long, and maybe, and maybe it was something wrong with my body. And maybe it's because I am a bit older. And I went through that whole gamut. And then it was after it was, oh my God, like, how do I, it's like my whole life was like a deck of cards and it was just blown up. And then it was, wow, some of the pieces came back. Some of them I've never seen. And we've got new pieces that have come in, and it's really navigating all of that. And, I was chatting with a girlfriend of mine, and, we were talking about the idea of that eventually you get over it. You get over it, you move on. And it's so fascinating, because it's not like something that I talk about all the time now. I mean, I've always been very, very, very closed with it. It's just, I've always kept it very close to my heart, because I think it not only shattered my heart, it basically started to crumble the family. And it was just, oh my goodness. And so at a point it was like, I can't keep talking about it and function at the same time. I did, however, learn that joy and grief coincide. And I was able to learn that dance was normal and then it was okay. And I love that you said about anger. It's like I had to give myself permission to be angry. I was angry at myself, angry at my body, angry at the doctors, angry at my ex-husband. I was angry at God. I was angry at everyone. And it really shook my faith because I thought, why would you do this? Why would you have such a beautiful blessing and then take it? And and so my mind went into a myriad of different directions with it. And it was like, oh my goodness. And like 10 years ago, we didn't have a community. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have everyone being vulnerable and courageous, sharing their stories and making it relatable to people. And I hear what you're saying. And, and with the work that I do, I will say to some people, I'll say, this isn't to negate the loss or the pain that you're experiencing, but suffering is a choice. And now we can get up and we can choose to be angry and we can choose to feel the gamut of the emotions. And maybe one day when you're ready, you can choose to find a bit of joy, find something that brings you happiness, something that brings your heart a little bit of peace. Maybe there's just a little sprinkling. Like I like to plant seeds. And again, I tell people I'm 10 years in. So those first few years I was a mess. Like I didn't wear mascara. I've shared that on so many shows. Where I didn't know when I was going to be triggered. And so again, the toxic positivity. And, my husband at the time, he was like, wasn't meant to be. Are we having chicken for supper? Like that was it. Like there was no discussion. And so I think that I love what you shared earlier about, men grieve differently. And I love that, I love that you shared a bit of that for us, because I think men sort of get forgotten over here. Like they're not, I just contributed the sperm and that's it. That's all I did. But no, you created a life with, with your partner. Yeah.
There's something to be said about obviously it happening directly to the woman. And I think that that's probably why we carry it so much. I don't want to say more heavily than men, because I don't want to speak for them. I think that your body keeps the score, and we remember the contractions. We remember the bleeding. We remember if you had a stillbirth. I mean, the actual physical labor of being in the hospital, all of the above. And with men, it's kind of almost like an out of body experience. Like they're watching this happen from a different perspective, and they're worried about their partner. They're worried about, and I guess, it's not necessarily just men, it's non-birthing partners. They're just worried about what's happening to two people that they love very much.
Yes.
And I think there's something to be said about the fact that, yes, it's happening directly to the women. And so I think that that's why we carry it a little bit more heavily than men do. But I think that there's also something to be said about, okay, well, there's the other side of it too. Like there's something that we're not getting because we weren't watching ourselves go through it. We were just feeling it.
Absolutely. And like what you said, I mean, I can only imagine how how a man would feel watching his partner go through that and to feel helpless, like they're not able to come in and solve it, or, come up with a game plan, let's strategize and we'll do this and we'll do that. And they just, to be helpless in that situation. I love that you create a space so families know that their pregnancy matters and their baby. I love that. What is your plan moving forward with the understanding heart? What does that look like?
Man, I don't know. I really started this because I felt called to do it. I have always loved writing. And right after we went through everything we went through with Anthony, I wrote it all down because I said to my husband, I was like, I have a feeling that we're going to need this someday and I'm going to use it in some way. I was like, I don't know if it's going to be a book or whatever, but I just felt like what we went through needed to be shared. And now that it has been, I'm just very grateful that it feels like my grief has had somewhere to go. It still sits with me, the milestones, as you just shared with your grandmother. It's like those milestones will just completely catch you off guard. Every year, right around Christmas, it hits his due date in July, it hits. but my hope is at the very least, I would just love to continue to share stories. It would be fantastic if I were able to, reach more people. It's like, I want to reach more people, but I don't want to have to share these stories, but we have to, because that's what makes us talk about them more. So honestly, just reaching more people, and I'm kind of excited just to see where it goes. I'm really proud of what it's done so far in the year and a half that I've had it. And as difficult as it is to read these stories, it's something very near and dear to my heart, and it's very special to me, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Oh, as you should be. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And where can people find you? How can people find you? You're on Instagram.
Yes, I am on Instagram, and it's The Understanding Heart, all one word, spelled as you think it should. And then theunderstandingheart.com. That's where you can read other women's stories. I have them categorized by usually the type of loss or the situation. We do have a category of like coping with loss. I have this series I've been doing recently of women that have already written about their pregnancy loss, but then describe what life is like after, which I think is very, very interesting. And just something that's really not talked about. I think the event itself of a miscarriage, a stillbirth is discussed, or however, of course, all the pregnancy losses, I don't want to exclude any, is discussed, but I think that that's always an interesting perspective. And there's also a place to share your own story. So if you are interested, there's no format. You can email me and ask questions at theunderstandingheart@gmail.com, or just send your story directly there. You can take a look at some of the other stories and see how they formatted it. Or you can just write and see what happens. And pretty much I'll receive those and then kind of time them out, and I share them on Instagram. And you become really special to me, because I'm just so honored that there are people that are willing to say, hey, use my baby, as a way to tell other women about what this is like. Because I know for a fact that there's women in my life that had no idea, close friends of mine that are like, oh my gosh, I really had no idea what you went through. I had no idea what my 5 other friends that had a miscarriage went through. And now I do. And now I understand. And that's honestly more than I can ask for.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Thank you. And we will have all of your information, how to contact you and find you, in the show notes. I am so grateful for our time together, our chat. We could keep chatting forever.
Yeah.
There's always something else we could chat about. And
yes.
so thank you again. Thank you for sharing The Understanding Heart. And thank you for sharing your Anthony and your story. And I'm excited to see how it continues to grow as well. I think that more women will find solace and peace, and just that the validation of their loss, of their baby, of their experience, their story. And I think that that's just so important. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so nice to speak with you, and I appreciate everything you do as well. It means a lot to this community and a lot to the women you serve. So thank you.
Thank you. Boom. Amazing.
Yeah, that was so nice. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you. It's it's so amazing to be a part of something that I feel like I'm a part of a movement now. Like I feel like I'm just kind of part of it. It's like we're all kind of part of this stream that's flowing. I mean, there are the stillborn babies, there's the failed IVF, and then there's it's like everybody has their little group in there, and it's so important. I love that. There's the validating the experience.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful, and I love The Understanding Heart. I think that is I love that. That is so beautiful. So beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I'll let you know when we will be hitting the airwaves. I've got your graphics and all your info, and I'll tag you and everything, and kind of let you know when we've got everything all done and polished out on the airwaves, and then we'll share it out with our people and on social media, and let everybody know where to find you. And I think it'll be great. It's it's so beautiful that women can share their stories. I think that's amazing. So
thank you. I'm excited about it too. And I'm grateful because I feel like it's nice to have a different, lack of a better word, like medium to share my story. I feel like I've written it a bunch of times. I have been on one podcast like years ago, but I feel like I've honed my story a little bit better. And so I feel way more comfortable sharing it out loud. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. And I just love sharing everyone's story and everyone's experience. And some people some guests that I've had on before, it's all about mediumship and connecting, and it's not always like that, and that's totally fine. It's just I honor it, right? And it's interesting too, because there are certain groups that I've wanted to be a part of over the years, not because I'm a medium, because I've lost my son, and it's nice to connect with other people. Of course, it's not a group that we wake up and think, hey, I'd like to be a part of that group. No,
right.
It's just and we can make the best of it. And but yeah, I think this was very special. Thank you.
This was very special. Thank you. Shauna, can I ask you a question?
Of course, yes.
And you can completely still be like, no, but when I speak with you, and then maybe this is just me understanding your gift a little bit better. When I speak with you, even over Zoom, can you sense the people that I know that have crossed over? That's wild. Am I able to just ask about any energy you felt?
Is there anyone in particular?
I mean, can you tell me what popped up if there was like a few? So I would be happy to expand. I'm just curious.
Of course.
I would be so mad at myself if I didn't ask this question. I do not want to disrespect you in any way.
No, not at all. Ask away. So before we started, so all day today, I have been thinking, I'd really like to eat Italian. I don't eat Italian. I don't eat a lot of pasta. I was like, I just kept thinking Italy. And it was just like, what is that? Like, I just kept thinking, I was just, and I'm busy doing this, busy doing that. I didn't really connect into it. And then when I went through and was looking, I was the last few days, I was kind of looking through your feed and sort of looking at different topics we could talk about. And when I saw the understanding heart, I thought, oh, that's your grandfather. That's so sweet. And then as you started chatting, it was like, oh, and he was laughing. He's like, it's me. Yeah, it's me. It's like, he's like, yeah, it's me. I said that's right. And he was just
so sweet.
He's just so lovely. And he is, he's very proud of what you've created.
Thank you.
And that you're a beautiful mother.
Thank you.
I can see Anthony with him. And so, yeah, he's got that. He has that sweet soul with him. And I see children growing up on the other side. So Jack presents to me as a 10-year-old. And so I see this sweet little being with him. And he's so proud. And he's saying that, it's family is so important. And just that love that you have for family is just so important. And he said, not only the understanding heart, it's what you do is you hold space for people. And that is so beautiful. That is life-changing. And what he's telling me is that the women that connect with you and they share their stories, so that you're able to help their healing by doing that. And the validation is so important. And the validation piece goes back to the understanding heart, because I feel like everyone that he would meet and interact with, he wanted them to know that there's nothing wrong with them. Like they were just, he was just so all inclusive. And he even if somebody did something wrong, he wouldn't, cut them off and don't talk to them and get angry. It's like he would always try to understand them. And he would always think, they've had something happen to them as to why they're behaving like that. And it's beautiful. Yeah, he's beautiful. He's so lovely. And
does he have a woman energy with him?
I see a woman behind him. Yeah, I do see a woman behind him.
Yeah. Does she have anything to say? She's usually the louder one.
Right? Is that your grandmother?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your grandmother.
Mhm.
Can you close your eyes
Mhm.
and just take a nice deep breath in? She's just right there. They're both right there. All three of them all. But just take a deep breath. She's right there. She is just so sweet. I feel like you were the apple of her eye. I feel like you were her favorite.
Oh my God, she said that to me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You were the apple of her eye. You were her favorite. Yeah. Oh, can you breathe that in? Yeah. Yeah. Just
It's literally, she would say that to me all the time. That's crazy that you said that.
aw. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to pull that out of you. I know that that's
No.
something extra and special.
No, please. I'm honored. I'm honored to make that connection for you. Honored. Yeah. So just breathe that in. Yeah, that's beautiful. Aw.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Oh my goodness. Again, they love you so much. And
I
there's
love them very much. I miss them.
of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you for sharing with me. I'm gonna disconnect from them and I'm gonna
Yes. Yes.
they're gonna stay with you now.
Mhm.
So you may want to journal, just stay in the energy with them. And
Yes, for sure.
do you get signs from them?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. I want to make sure. I always make sure when I chat with somebody, you
Yes.
get okay.
Yeah, I feel very confident that when we found out about Anthony, I was like, well, grandma and grandpa have him. Like I wasn't concerned.
They've got him. Absolutely. Are you thinking of having another baby?
I'm pregnant. Yep. I'm very scared. But I've also felt a lot of peace. I'm only 7 weeks.
Big, healthy baby. That's all she's saying. Big, healthy baby. Yeah. Big, healthy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You really don't know what you just did.
Yeah. Big, healthy baby. I see. Whoo. Big.
Oh, geez.
You have to let me know. I'm not trying to scare you. They're just
Well.
big, healthy baby. Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, beautiful. I see a boy physically, but that could change. But yeah, it looks like a boy. Yeah. Big, beautiful baby boy. Yeah. Yeah. Can you breathe that in?
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
yeah. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, my honor. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. Thank you. And I can't wait. Oh, it's gonna be just so beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Shauna. Of course, I'll keep up with you and everything.
Yes, absolutely. You're not shaking me now. Yeah, I'm part of the family.
No, you're part of it forever. Thank you so very much for everything you do and everything you did for me today.
So welcome, Brittany. Mwah. All of my love, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you, Shauna. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good day. Bye.